I mean, not exactly something to put on a tombstone, if you know what I mean. But anyway, we work with what we have. I am the Bulldog. Mike Schopp is away today. Very, very pleased to welcome in on the West Her Hotline our buddy from TSN, one of the finest hockey analysts in all the land. He is Travis Yost. Travis, good afternoon. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. I feel like you and your Sabres are doing a little better these days, though, huh?
Well, you could say that. Yeah, 23-1 through the last 24 games. I saw a graphic today that it's the fifth best. It's a pretty funny thing, a 24-game run, but whatever. It's the fifth best record through any pocket of 24 games in an NHL season. I mean, they're on a list with like the 1932 Bruins or something here, which is just bonkers.
Bulldog, you know how good the Sabres are right now? National article on Monday from this man, Travis Yost, will be about the Buffalo Sabres, also sharing a little space with the Utah Mammoth, who little run of their own out in the West. But, the Sabres getting some national Canadian spotlight, as they deserve.
Well, they did drub Toronto on Tuesday night, so it's perhaps warranted and top of mind. Well, I thought no person better to ask than you. How sticky is this, Travis? We've seen win streaks come and go. A 10-game win streak back in, I think it was 17 or 18. But there was a lot of overtime and shootout luck and and we know how that turned out. It was just another log on the 14-year playoff drought fire. How sticky is this Sabre team right now in their results?
Before I answer, and I've got a good response, I got to ask you one question on that. How, on a 1 to 10 scale, how furious are you that they now have a 20-day Olympic break right around the corner?
Dude, yeah, not pleased. All right, not pleased. I'll even less pleased if something happens to somebody over there. Luukkonen's already down. I mean, we don't know if he's going to be out long enough to miss the entire Olympics or what. The timing is about as bad as it could be, I think.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been doing this a long time, and I've got a cemetery of really horrendous takes that would take me years and years to go through. But I'll tell you which take has aged pretty well. Last time I was on with you guys, I was joking with Mike about this earlier in the week. I think the question was something to the effect of, what are you more optimistic about, the Bills or the Sabres? And the Bills, the most winning franchise, I think, regular season the last 6 years. The Sabres, just a persistent futility and always a disaster, dumpster fire. And I kind of made the point, now granted I had PTSD from the Texans game, I kind of made the point that, I actually thought the Sabres were pretty well positioned, and this is before they went on this blistering white-hot run. And, I could have never foreseen how hot this team would get. But I would argue this has been building in some degree. This has been building for some time. I mean, for the last couple of seasons, certainly when we're talking with you guys, you see, even when the Sabres weren't stringing wins together, they've been such a more competitive 5-on-5 team over the last couple of years. And even when they were losing, you could tie almost all of it to either defensive breakdowns or really just shoddy goaltending, much more the latter. And I think we even talked last summer heading into the season about, what does this season look like? And I'm like, look, I'm still super bullish on the talent. I went back and I actually cited this article in the one that's coming up on Monday. I went back and I do, every summer I do the talent tiers. I grade every position, every depth chart of all the 32 teams. And I had Buffalo's blue line as one of the best blue lines in the league, and they graded pretty well elsewhere. And people are like, generally speaking, you're way too hot on the Sabres. And I'm like, this is a good team. There's a lot of talent around this. And what they may lack in real top-end talent, they clearly make up for in depth competency, which, by the way, the connective tissue with them and the Mammoth. But the 900-pound, girl in the room was always, what sort of goaltending are they going to get? And you heard something. I think you asked the question of, what do you know about Alex Lyon? And I'm like, he's a journeyman goalie. You may get a great year. You may get an underperforming year. But I think that's an important distinction. Clearly the skaters have played net better than even the last couple of years when they've been pretty decent, especially offensively. But the goaltending has come along on this ride, right? Alex Lyon's been one of the better goalies in the league. And even UPL's turned it around from the first month or so of the season. And I don't, I was ruminating over Alex Tuch's comments. I don't know if you caught him last night.
Dude, I opened the show talking about him.
That's a great, I love that. to me, whether you want to get lost in the sauce of, like, is this a Stanley Cup contender? I think the more, like, if I'm a Sabres fan, the comforting part is, are they a playoff team? The answer to me is unequivocally yes. We are past the halfway mark of the season. By the way, they still have $3 million of cap space heading into the trade deadline, should be noted. And they're, top 6, top 7 in the league in goal differential? I mean, their season to date is pretty comparable with Carolina. Tampa Bay, I think, has been the class so far in the Eastern Conference. But, like, if you're comparable with the Carolina Hurricanes through 50, 55 games, I think that makes you an unequivocal playoff contending team, right? And so, like, yes, can they keep stringing together a white-hot run like this through the rest of the season? Of course not. No one expects them to. But should they win more games on average than they lose the rest of the way? Smart money and the base case is the answer is yes. And to me, like, it's more of a question of, like, why shouldn't this team finish top 3 in the Atlantic rather than, and I know it's there's a tremendous race for that 3 spot. There's always a risk.
Nobody wants to lose, Travis.
No one's losing in that except the Maple Leafs, which another theme we talked about, by the way. But I think the question is the Sabres are a playoff team in my eyes. I think that's pretty clear. I think they're like 75% to make it already. The question is, how do you ensure that you get into that 3 spot, or the 2 or 3 spot in the Atlantic Division? You never really want to be a wild card team in any sport. And even in the NHL, wild card teams have a better chance of advancing. But if that means like a 7-round matchup in the first round with Tampa Bay, yeah, I'm probably not super hot on that. But can the Sabres beat most of the teams in the Eastern Conference? My answer is yes, and it was a month ago, it was 2 months ago, and it still is today.
Yeah, I love the decor and, like, being high on them because I think if there's anything through this stretch that would qualify as a superpower for this team, it's their top 4D and how they've been playing. And they're getting by with, like, Metsa, and now, Kesselring is back, and it was Jacob Bryson, on the third pair, but they were really leaning on those top 4. All of them were playing over 20 minutes, have been playing over 20 minutes a night, and we'll see if that can stabilize here as we get into, the post-Olympic break. But those top 4D, I mean, I know that we're living in a world where defensemen are all over the ice and below the goal line, and, like, lots of teams do it. But it feels like watching them night in, night out, that those 4D are the thing on this team, I think.
No, unequivocally agree. Thought it in August, and, like, this is always like a lot of things change in the NHL. One thing that really hasn't changed is if you don't have supernovas at the top of the lineup, and I mean real supernovas, I'm talking McDavid, McKinnon, if you don't have a handful of those guys around the league, then your real path to contention is being able to roll at least 3 lines and ideally 3 defensive pairings, whatever that fourth forward line looks like. I think it's a little more gray, but that's what the Sabres have. I mean, there are very few, I would say, bona fide weaknesses across this lineup. And by the way, one thing that even someone, I was pretty bullish on the outlook of this team, at least in terms of, like, can they make the playoffs this year? One thing I didn't foresee is they're really getting outperformance from guys who I didn't even, spend a waking second even thinking about. You brought up Zach Metsa. Do you know what the Sabres are doing with him on the ice? I think he's played like 20, 25 games this year. Do you know what they're doing with him on the ice 5-on-5?
I don't.
They have outscored the opponents 16-2 with him on the ice, which is unfathomable for a call-up making whatever his entry-level contract money. I mean, those are the type of numbers you see from top tier defensemen. And yeah, some of it's a little shooting percentage and save percentage driven, and it'll regress back to some degree of normality. But, like, they just keep finding pockets of influence further down the lineup. And by the way, when I say, like, they don't have a supernova, that's not to diminish guys like Thompson and Tuch, who are fantastic at the top of the lineup. It's just if you're not confident that your top line, your top pairing can persistently drive a 60% goal share over the course of the year, which, by the way, is extremely high bar to clear, then you really need the rest of the team to pull their proverbial weight, and that's what the Sabres are getting right now.
The mighty Travis Yost from TSN here on the Wester Hotline. I am the Bulldog. Mike is away today. I'd love to hear you talk about Owen Power. This is a player that has been, through his NHL career, I mean, the Sabres results have been terrible, and he's got the curse of being a big guy who does not play like a big guy. But he is definitely a part of what I'm talking about with this superpower. I mean, the puck moving and the breakouts and the offensive zone, I think he's been, to my eyes, fantastic. I'd love to hear you riff on just what Owen Power has become. It's funny, the production is way off. I just noticed maybe last night or the game before, like he wasn't even anchoring the number 2 power play anymore, because you know what? Despite having done it for like 50 games this year, you know how many power play points he has? 0, which is incredible, right? But just overall Power, because there's a lot of fans out there that just completely are never going to buy it because of what I said at the outset here, that he's the big guy and doesn't play big, and he's got his defensive shortcomings, sure, but just what do you see from Owen Power?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this has necessarily been his best year, but I think it's been one of his toughest years, and I say that in a complimentary way, which is he's had to shoulder a lot of workload on an otherwise relatively deep blue line. I mean, you know, with the horrific 3-month stretch here that Rasmus Dahlin and his family have been going through, and a defense that's really evolving around that top pair. The one thing the Sabres have done, and I think this kind of speaks a little bit to the production, he plays some of the toughest minutes. He might play the toughest minutes across the entire Sabres lineup. And, yeah, he's a big body, but he's not a super physical guy. But I also see, like, it's right what you said at the top, which is, you know, everyone wants this, like, 6'7", 240 hulking guy who's going to blow you through the boards, but in the same time can pass like prime Erik Karlsson and skate like him too. And it's like, these guys are unicorns. They don't really. Kel McCarr was created in a lab. He doesn't just exist on every one of these teams. But having the size and being able to play within that size and having an offensive skill set in a toolbox that can kind of complement that size, that's exactly what you look for in the modern day defenseman. And I think he's kind of found his niche as, like, in one respect, I think the coaching staff, the Sabres, see it as, hey, when we're in those tough minutes, when we're up against, a top line, one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference, especially when we're entering the playoffs, like, Power's going to be eating up a lot of those minutes, because I want Dahlin to cook maybe in some of those softer minutes, moving the puck up ice, sustaining offensive zone pressure, driving the offense from the back end. It's not to say that Power doesn't do that, but I think Power's role is becoming increasingly more defined as, hey, we just need you to break even, because the rest of the team is actually net much better than where you were 2-3 years ago. And by the way, I think there's a beautiful harmony in that, right? Like, it creates expectations with the player, and I think it speaks to a large degree. Yeah, would you like to see more points? Would you like to see a better 5-on-5 goal differential? Of course, you always want that, but context matters in this sport, no different than anything else. And when he's on the ice, it's a lot of defensive zone-oriented minutes. It's a lot of tough top six competition. And I think he's done a pretty good job so far this year, to be honest.
How about I'm going to run through the whole decor, I think, perhaps, if time allows. Matias Samuelson, Travis, I don't know how closely you would have been paying attention last year when, I don't remember if it was February or March, when Tage Thompson got trucked by New Jersey. And Samuelson was one of the people on the ice that did not seem to notice, even though the linesmen were chasing the Devils player around. There was no reaction. And from that, and just, the results being bad, he became a guy that was just, get him off the team, buy him out. And I'm not saying like lunatic fringe unless I'm the lunatic fringe, because I was there with everyone. Like, I don't know what's the value of this guy. He's not that fleet of foot. He's not that offensively productive. He's not mean. It's a nothing burger. This year, I mean, he's scoring like a maniac. He hasn't had this many points in a season since he was like 12 years old. I'm not kidding. And he's also wrecking dudes. Like, what kind of light bulb went off there? I mean, can you explain the turnaround in his game?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could apportion this a bunch of different ways. I don't remember the exact play you referenced last year, but I very much remember the let's get him out of town and, hey, look, this guy's numbers are absolutely awful. He would be, and I mean this league-wide, this is not hyperbole, like league-wide, he would be one of the 4 presidents on Mount Rushmore of year over year. How do you explain this type of turnaround? I mean, I think he's 2 points shy of where Jack Quinn is. We're talking about a guy with 30-plus points halfway through the season, and he's not known for any offensive touch. I think you hit the nail on the head on one respect, though, which is what I see from him this year versus last year. And it's easy to attribute this to coaching. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. Maybe the player deserves more credit. if you said, hey, in his exit interview last April, the coaching staff got in front of him and said, we need you to play more physically, especially if you're going to be playing in the top four, especially if you're going to be playing with a Rasmus Dahlin type who really is going to have the puck on his stick a tremendous amount of time. And, yes, of course, these pairings always change, but you will never play in this lineup in this position long term if we cannot get some more physicality out of you. Whatever it was, I'd like to think that was the logical explanation, but he is certainly playing with more physicality. And the offensive touch, by the way, the offensive scoring, I think is indicative. It's the sum of the parts issue, right? Like, he's got a very defined role. And by the way, when you're the lesser of the two on a defensive pairing, but you're playing with a very cohesive, very dominant five-man unit, he almost always plays with the Sabres top six. He regularly plays with Dahlin. Like, it's a rising tide lifts all boats scenario, and that's not to discredit Samuelson. It's more so, playing environment matters a lot in this sport, and I would say it's one of the most underrated. And we talk about it a lot as like line chemistry or pairing chemistry, but like playing with talent matters a ton. Playing without talent also matters a ton. A lot of guys who have been historically great performers around the league who have underperforming years. One of the first things I look at 17 years and counting running is, well, what was their playing environment like? Who are they playing with regularly? Who's on their defensive pair? What forwards are they playing with? And I think he's got the right mix. I think he's brought a physical tone to the game this year. And I mean, if you look at it, by the way, this was like an early oh yeah, it's a cool October story. Even when the Sabres were struggling a bit early in the year, Samuelson was outperforming. I mean, they're 20 goals better than their opponents 5-on-5 this year with him on the ice. That's a remarkable number. And yes, that is a 5-on-5. It is an on-ice number. He's just a slice of that pie. But when you have a missing link or a weakness, especially in your top four, especially in your top six, and you're playing good quality competition around the league, those guys are routinely exposed, right? And you see those numbers plummet, and that just hasn't been the case this year. And I think he deserves full kudos. I mean, if you had a short list of comeback player of the year, yeah. I mean, if you look at his numbers a year ago to this, it's almost hard to believe they're the same player, which I think is exactly your point.
I almost wonder if his dad, Shell, didn't have a come to Jesus talk with him about it. Like, played in the league a long time. Maybe he just kid, what are you doing? I don't know. Something happened.
I would be fascinated if one of the local guys gets there, and it's like to me, it's a good faith question too. It's like, look, the numbers are better, the team's better, we get all that, but you individually look better. What did you focus on this offseason? I think it's a fascinating question. I bet he would give a good answer to that. I don't think he would just say, well, my on-ice shooting percentage is 12%. I think you hear a lot more than that.
Right. The last of the top four, Byram, had been prior to this year, and I don't know how different it is. You tell me what the numbers are telling you. Last year especially, he with Dahlin, wow, look at them all over the ice, and then you take him away from Dahlin, and it was just oh my God, a disaster is happening. What are we doing? But he's a part of this too. What do the numbers tell you about him?
I would say a pretty similar story to Power. He's facing a little tougher competition this year. I think he's doing an adequate job. By the way, he's brought a goal-scoring touch this year.
Yep.
He's always been kind of the top four, modern day, I can play both ways type defenseman, or that was certainly the idea when he was drafted and brought into the league, that he could develop into this player. But he's got 10 goals on the year. And this is what I saw, just even going, and this is, by the way, and all this aside, right? Kesselring's been just injury riddled most of the year. But when you look at this depth chart between Samuelson having a massive outperformance here, Dahlin and Power being two absolute horses that you were betting on in a literal sense and also a financial sense. I think there's $20 million tied up between just those two guys alone. I mean, the Sabres have put a lot of money into this blue line. It's not like this thing was just, farted into thin air. They bet on this group heavily. They were, most of these guys were blue chip prospects entering the league. And the Sabres have done a very good job developing them into a top four. And it's why, Byram complements, especially playing with Power. I think that unit, that duo, can alleviate a lot of the burden, especially from the Dahlin pairing, where, if you go back a few years ago, I think one thing that was clear as day to me, even when we were hyper bullish about Dahlin, and I think we even talked about this a few years ago, where Dahlin's numbers were really tailing off. And I think the one qualifying component to why Dahlin was quote unquote struggling, and I thought he was at the time, was he had no insulation around him. I mean, he was shouldering all of the offensive burden, getting blamed for a lot of the defensive mistakes and miscues, And quite frankly, they didn't have any depth behind his top pairing to be able to roll three pairings, ensure that you're keeping your shift length short, ensure that, you're managing minutes and any light injuries. Like, there's no way they could have done that. So the Sabres, whether they're smart or whether it was luck or a combination of the two, usually it's both, they invested heavily in this group, and Byram's been good, Power's been good, and the top pairing has been fantastic. It's why, as long as the Alex Lyons of the world in the Buffalo Sabres crease can just provide adequate goaltending, and I really mean that, adequate goaltending, this lineup, with maybe the exception, I don't even know how much I want to caveat that, with maybe the exception of a Tampa or Carolina, these legacy teams that are just as deep and maybe a slightly more talented on the top end, the Sabres and this defense and their top six should be able to compete with any team in the Eastern Conference. And it's, to me, that's kind of bringing this back full circle to the Tuch quote. Like, okay, he's super bullish about the Stanley, he's talking about the Stanley Cup. You love that hype. You want to run through a wall for it. But my takeaway was he's kind of rounding up because the actual number that he's looking at with the decimal point is we already know we're a playoff team. And if I'm a Sabres fan amidst this 14-year drought, that's music to my ears.
Love it, love it, love it. There's so much more I wanted to get into and talk more about Tuch. You can't trade him now. I mean, I didn't think they were going to anyway. I think they'd more likely let it play out if they don't get a contract done with him. But now that he said that, I mean, that just cements it because the optics of trading that guy would be horrific.
So I took two things from that quote, just like as an aside. That's exactly what we want from a leader. A leader, air quotes, or literal leader in the sense. But also, I kind of took it as a nod from Tuch to the front office, and you never know how negotiations are going, and I know they've probably been working on that, but I kind of took it as a nod. You can kind of guess what that quote really meant or if it meant anything at all, but one thing that I think stands out is, you don't say that unless you're committed. And
right.
Athletes are not committed for, okay, I have a 2-month stretch run and then I can sign with Vegas. That's not how this guy is thinking. He's clearly thinking, I like where we're at. I like where this organization's at. And I want to say something that's so motivational and so uplifting that people know I'm committed here. That, to me, is a guy you want to invest in. And I could not disagree with your point. Trade deadline, that seems impossible for Mr. Tuch here.
Yeah, the first thing I tweeted as soon as I saw that last night, A, you can't trade him. B, I wonder if there's an extension in the wind because a guy, he does not sound like a guy that's got a foot out the door. That's for sure. Travis, we're out of time. You got 30 seconds or a minute on the Bills? Yeah, 30 seconds. Like I said in November, I'm a little more optimistic about the Sabres than the Bills. No, I don't know what to make of this whole ordeal. We want massive change, but we're not really changing anything at all. It seems like it's just isolated to a McDermott issue, which, by the way, I think we're all going to be guessing at whether that was the right approach or not until the season actually picks up again. But one thing that is kind of clear to me as a takeaway from this is if you're betting on change, but the only change you make is really at one position, right, head coach, and now you're letting Joe Brady fill in his staff, what you're really saying is the head coach was the problem. And I don't know how they're going to solve the overall talent issues unless they hit a home run around the draft, because I still think this is a extremely and disproportionately quarterback-driven team. I like to be hopeful that Joe Brady's got a different philosophy of things, and maybe McDermott was abrasive to that. But I think we're kind of whistling past the graveyard a little bit. You're trying to get excited about a new coach, but the core issues with the talent across this roster and a lot of the stuff they're going to have to do this offseason, I think, remain ahead of us right now. Excellent work, Travis. Thank you so much for this. We'll keep an eye out, and I'll make sure to retweet and whatever, make sure our audience knows about the piece you mentioned on Monday on the Sabres. Amen, brother. Take care. All right, it's Travis Yost from TSN. Sounds pretty sticky to me what he had to say about the Sabres, I think, for sure. You want to talk about it? 803-05.